Status of your app Gunslugs now ready for sale. Hey, I'm Pascal from Orangepixel. Gunslugs is a decade-old game and has always been available in the App Store, but Apple has been removing old games that haven't been updated for a long time and aren't selling many numbers. You can still reactivate those apps as a developer by uploading a new version, which is what I did. I'm going to talk about that after the intro. I'm also going to talk about Residual because that's tied into Gunslugs being on the App Store, and we're now at the second half of this year, and I want to talk about my plans for the second half. What are my plans for the rest of the year? Of course, I'll do an end of year review eventually, but where are we now? How is it going? And what will I be doing? All that stuff after the intro. So as mentioned, let's start with Gunslugs being back on the App Store. Apple has been removing games that are pretty much, like I just said, not been updated for a while and are not selling a lot. I think what triggered the removal of Gunslugs was I pushed it into my usual discounts along with all my other games. The discount probably maybe just sold 1 or 2 copies. That's a very low number. Then it triggers a system at Apple and they see, well, this game hasn't been updated for a while, doesn't seem to be very hot, well, let's just remove it. There's a lot to say about that, whether you agree or not. I don't agree with it, but I'm not gonna go into all that stuff. I get it from Apple's perspective. The thing is, you can just update your game, and it will be available again. That just updating was the biggest thing for me. It pretty much requires updating my Mac, updating Xcode, the development environment that you create games with, even though I don't use it, but I need it for certain tools that come with it and that need updating. I needed to update libgdx, which I use to build these games, and MobiVM, which then allows those games to run on iPhone. That's already a lot of, I'm gonna need a lot more fingers to point to all these things. Long story short, I finally figured everything out, got it up and running, and Gunslugs is a little bit of a test case for me to see if I can still build games and release them on iOS. I haven't released a game on iOS since 2019, I think, so 2 or 3 years now. It's a process that you have to go through just to get into the groove of things. Now that it's up and running and approved in one go, it took 2 days and then it got approved without problems, anything. That makes me very confident that I can push out Residual to iOS. This was pretty much a test case. I couldn't screw up with this game. Nobody's gonna write about this game being on the App Store again. Nobody's gonna jump on it. But for me, it's a big thing that it's available again. And now that I know I can release games on iOS, we can continue with Residual. Good question from Rohit on the Discord when I talked about Gunslugs. Is it still worth to update these games? Well, at some point it's not gonna be worth it. For me, Gunslugs is still worth it because I'm releasing it to new platforms like the Switch. We're working on Atari VCS version. So it's still part of my active collection of games, even though it's like a decade old, like literally 10 years old since I released, or 10 years ago I released the first Gunslugs on Ouya, Android, iOS, then later on PC, now it's on Switch. At some point it's not worth it to update these things, but for me, if I discount this game for like 99 cents or maybe even less on Android, and I can attract new players into my whole ecosphere of games, they'll check out Gunslugs, maybe they'll love it. Maybe they will check out Gunslugs 2, 3, hopefully, other games, all the Orangepixel games, other platforms. I hope it actually builds brand recognition and a fan base, pretty much. So for now, it's still interesting to keep these games alive. Also, Gunslugs is pretty much a little special project to me. I can't stand to see this game die already. It's still, I just love it still. It brought me a lot of stuff over the years, just a lot of connections, a lot of, it opened some doors here and there, being on the Ouya, even though the Ouya kind of failed miserably. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is an Ouya, this is a clear version, transparent. It's pretty much an Android device console thingy. It was a Kickstarter, it did massive numbers on Kickstarter, and then it delivered this thing which was a bit underwhelming for what most people thought it would be. To be honest, for what it was, pretty good. The controllers were terrible, but the device was interesting, and it also started a bunch of other devices like the Nvidia Shield, which is a great Android TV console thingy. Anyway, Gunslugs was one of the first games on this, not the first, but amongst the first games, and it did pretty well over the years and has still been selling well. So Gunslugs has a special place in my heart, and that's why I keep it updated. At some point, I will probably just create a new Gunslugs that will replace the old one, and then we'll focus on the new one, and slowly the old one will die. Just not yet. So like I said, it's mostly been a practice for me, a practice run. Residual is coming to mobile, and I don't want to screw up that game, so I needed to make sure that I could pretty much still build and release games on the iOS. I've been tinkering this week on Residual, the mobile stuff, touchscreen controls, they all needed tweaking and perfecting. I'm now very close to that. For the iOS version, I also needed to create the App Store page, which is now mostly done with screenshots, little preview videos, which I just cut from the trailer. I take the 30 seconds because previews on iOS can only be like 30 to 45 seconds, so or no, 15 to 30 seconds, so very short clips. I take an interesting part of the trailer and upload that one. I don't, you could do a special video, I guess, but I don't have the manpower for that. So I take this little, like a tiny part of the trailer and use that. You have to do it in different formats. Did that, different screenshots. Then I have to set up a bunch of icons for the game. All done, all ready to go. I had to fix controller stuff for Gunslugs. I tested in Gunslugs. Now controllers are supported. So Residual should also have controller support on the iOS. Obviously, mobile games, if you can create a mobile game and you really focus on mobile games, it's going to be some sort of touch control, swipe, move, stuff like that. This is a game that's not designed for mobile, it's designed for everything else. It's best played with a gamepad or controller hooked up to your Android or iPhone device, but the touch controls are there on the screen. I made it as simple and easy as possible, and I know there will be people who gonna complain about this. I always went with the thumbstick type stuff, or the buttons left, right, up, down, jump, fire, things like that, as minimum as possible. Not everybody's gonna love it, I know already, but for those people, play the game on PC or on Switch, anywhere else with a gamepad or controller or keyboard. It is available. If you're gonna play it on mobile, I did the best I could, and it's actually playable. I can actually jump and run around a planet and do all the missions, which is the main thing that you have to do in the game. So I'm pretty happy with the controls. I'm tweaking them as good as possible. They're also all very flexible. You can set up the whole layout of the controls, transparency, positioning, everything. I think we're almost ready to release the game. My goal is September. I think that's doable. If I spend 1 or 2 more days on this and then submit it to Apple for a test, I think we're ready to go. And I have a whole month or more to prepare all the stuff. So yeah, I'm very confident September Residual will be launching on iOS and Android. And that kind of brings me to the last topic of this video, my plans for the rest of the year. All right, this year has been interesting. Most of my time has been on Regulator City, which you can see over here. I've been working on that game now for a little over a year, I think. My goal is still to have it close to done at September, October. So right now we have Residual coming to mobile. We're working on games for Atari VCS. It's a niche market, it's not very big, but we have a bunch of games. And I say we because that's the console port version, so a Serious Lion is part of that. I think we have about 9 games, including Residual, that will go to the Atari VCS. The only thing right now is that I'm waiting for Atari to have some sort of paperwork between us. I can release the game, I can make money from the game, but nothing on paper says the game is mine or the money is mine, which is a bit of a weird situation. It's a young company, even though it has a very old name, it's a very young company. It has some stuff to figure out, and hopefully they will do that very quickly because we're ready to go. We want to release games on there. So Residual, Atari games, and hopefully, and I'm now looking at you, Serious Lion, yeah, don't duck away. This is hopefully we'll have Snake Core released on Switch for the end of the year. So one more Switch game, and with all those things combined, personally, I think if I run the numbers and estimates, I don't have to release Regulator City this year, which is a good thing because that allows me more time to promote it, to build up wish lists, to maybe do some stuff with it like demo versions, things like that. Alpha testing, beta testing, extra testing, and just stuff to attract players to the game, improve the game, and then it will be released next year, early next year probably. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. So based on how well Residual does on mobile, and of course I'll talk about that on this channel as well, there's more stuff I can now talk about concerning Residual and its sales numbers. That's going to be in the end of the year review, including the mobile stuff, how it did, and of course Atari games. If all those things work out, Regulator City can be safely pushed to the next year. I've explained this many times in videos. I can of course still release that game this year and then make more money this year, but more money also means paying more taxes. So why would I waste all that money on taxes if I can push the game just to the new year? It resets the tax balance because your income tax is paid over how much you earned in a year. If I earn a little bit less, I pay a little less taxes. I have to worry a little less on the next year because there will be a game released already. So it just works a lot better for me, and that's pretty much gonna be the plan. Of course, if Residual fails, our Switch game isn't released or doesn't do very well, Atari games aren't doing anything, I might still have to release Regulator City in some form, early access, whatever, something like that in this year. But there's room for all that to plan it out and play with it. And that's pretty much the reason why Gunslugs and Residual on iOS were very important to me now. Residual has to be released. So the rest of my year is mostly gonna be based on how Residual does on mobile. Yeah, no pressure there. Anyway, that's all I wanted to share in this week's video. Anyway, if you have questions, drop them in the comments below or hop on the Discord and come say hi and play the Discord game and all that stuff. I hope this video was informative, and of course, if you have questions, I'm repeating myself. I'm gonna just end the video right here because I've been repeating the last couple of things for 4 or 5 times. It's time to end the video. Like, subscribe, comment below or drop on the Discord, and I will see you next week. Thanks, bye.